नमस्ते बेटियों, खुश रहिए। आई JV Muskan Kumari from the Department of Science and Technology, and I'm working here as an assistant professor in JVWU Women's University and Faculty of Education in Technology. So it's well known that you all are the students of the NCAD second semester, and your course name is the Networking Programming. And in this, I have made multiple sessions of your course. Now, today I will discuss the session with you, and that's the basic topic name is the uh, generic socket options. What is the generic socket options, and what is the importance of this means, and how many functions are used as a generic socket? Clear. So, to make it an easy way to understanding you, I am just going to share some files which will help you to better understanding. Okay, so please just hold on here. Yes, here. So now here, this is the file which I have shared with you. The generic socket option. What is the generic socket options and how many types of them and what are the options are used in this one. So when we start the discussion with the generic socket options, the options are the protocol independent. That is, they are handled by the protocol's independent code within the kernel, isn't it? The codes which you have written for the establishment of the connection, that is basically handled by the protocols. Clear? uh, Within the kernel, not by one particular protocols module like the IPv4. Okay. So, but some of the options apply to only the certain types of the sockets. For example, even though socket broadcast, here is the socket broadcast. Socket option is called the generic. Socket broadcasting is called the generic option, generic socket options, and it applies only to the datagram sockets. Clear? Datagram socket. So socket broadcasting socket option is what? Doing what? These options basically enable or disable the ability of process to send and broadcasting the message. And all the controls of sending and receiving the message, or you can say like enable and disable the message is under this socket broadcasting socket options. Here, broadcasting is supported only for the datagram sockets and only on network. It only supported on the networks which is on the datagrams. Clear, and that support the concepts of broadcast messages also. And this is happening with the Ethernet and the tokenering, whatever the networks you are using, network architecture, and what is the structure of the network you are using, that depends on that one. And you cannot broadcast on the point to point. In point to point, it's not possible to broadcasting the messages because here there is a limited number of the nodes, only two nodes. One is the sender, another will act as the receiver, and whenever they are sending, then another will acts as the receiver. Clear. So point to point broadcasting is not possible, but in point to multi points it will involve. This is known as broadcasting. It means what there is a emitter. You know that the emitter, one who emits, that emits the lights of that things like the bulbs. Bulb, when you are using the bulb, the light emits surrounding all the sides, isn't it? In the all sides. So that is the broadcasting. That is a type of the broadcasting, right? So this is the broadcasting. In point to point, the broadcasting not possible, or any connection based transport protocols like the SCTP and TCP. Okay, so since application must set the socket options, application set the socket option before sending the broadcast datagram. It prevents a process from sending a broadcast, and when application was never designed to broadcast, for example, like the UDP application might take the destination IP addresses. UDP application might take the destination IP address as a command line arguments, but the application never intended for a user to type in a broadcast addresses. Okay, so I'm just explaining this already. UDP application take the destination IP and the UDP application know about the destination IP address as the command line argument same way. But the application never intended for a user. They didn't intended like the user to type the broadcast address. Clear? Rather than forcing an application to determine for a given address is a broadcast address or not, isn't it? They didn't do this type of activity. And the test is in the kernel. If the destination address is broadcast and the address of this socket is not safe, address you are broadcasting the address and the address of the socket is not safe, then excess is written. Excess is written. Okay. So now, if we talk about the socket debug, then what will happen when excess is returned? Then you are using the socket debug socket options. In the previous you have used the broadcast socket options. Now debug socket options. Then don't routine socket options. Okay. So what is the debug options? This option is basically supported by the TCP. When enabled for the TCP socket, the kernel keeps track of detailed information about all the packets sent or received by TCP for the socket. These are kept in a circular buffer within the kernel that can be examined with the TRPT program and also using the various TCP to provides the details or an example of use of the options whatever you are using here for what purpose to debug the socket options. Now if we talk about the socket don't root option, socket option. This option is specific that the outgoing packets are bypass normal routing mechanism of also the underlying protocols. And for example, suppose if we are using the IPv4, packet is distributed into the appropriate local interfaces and specified by the network the portion of the destination address they have already reached. If the local interface cannot determine from the destination address, local interface is determined by the destination address. The destination is not on the other end of the point to point link. Clear, or it is not on a shared network. So now it show you that what in turn reach is written. In turn reach is written. So now if we so the equivalent of the options can also be applied to the individual datagram. It is very easily that this is depending on the datagrams and also use the message to don't root flag with the send and send to or send message functions. We will use here the three functions. What first send, then send to and send message whatever the message you are sending and attaching with that ones. And after that, so error socket options, socket error socket options here. This is the last one. So what is in this one? When the error occurs on the socket, connectivity socket, the protocol module in the vertically derived kernel sets a variable name. So error socket error for the socket to one of the standard Unix and values. This is called the pending error for the sockets, and the process can also be immediately notified as an error. And this notified errors may be in two types. If process is blocked in a call, select on the socket for either reliability and writability. Select returns for either or both conditions. Clear? So now second is if the process is using single driven input output, the SIGIO signal is generated for either the process and processing both. Clear? So the process can then obtain the value of Socket error. By fetching the socket option, the integer value returned by get socket options in the pending error for the socket. The value of also socket error is then reset to zero with the kernel, yeah, by the kernel. Or if the error is non-zero, then the process call read and there is no data to return. And returning, if returns one, then error set to the value of socket error. The value of socket error is reset to again 0, and there will be the data queued for the sockets. Okay, and this will be the same as the if the socket is non-zero and the process call the write minus 1 is returned to the error no set to the value. So socket error and socket error is reset to be 0. Okay, so this is the basic topic which is I have discussed with you, like the generic socket options, in which we have read the three options: broadcast, debug, and don't root, and options error socket options. So please read this session with multiple online sites and the important standard books also available, like the Pearson publications, isn't it? And Wheeler publications. And if you want to discuss some more topics on this, then please do comments in the comment section box and let me know that what you want, what you have curiosity to know more about this in this session. Clear? Okay. So this is all about going to be in. Uh, I'm just concluding once again that generic socket options basically what protocol will independent and which is used for the some options to apply on the certain types of the sockets. Now in this we are using the three or four options. First option is broadcasting, socket broadcasting or socket option. Second is the socket debug socket options. Then socket do not root socket options and socket uh, error socket options. Okay, so please do let me know if you have any query regarding this ones. Okay, thank you.